Human development. During the first 12 years of a child's life, there is a significant physical, social, cognitive, and emotional change and growth which takes place. Growth and development continue until maturity and adulthood. In the early years, children work out their place in the world. They are part of a family, a community, a social system, yet they are also an individual being. Domains of development. Physical development. Growth and change in the brain, body, brain, senses, motor skills, and health. Cognitive development, learning, attention, memory, language, thinking, reasoning, and creativity. Psychosocial development, emotions, personalities, and social relationships. Children go through different stages in their development. Why study? It leads to a better understanding of why some children have difficulties/delays and how to best teach/support them. Also improves understanding of environmental factors that influence how a child grows physically, emotionally, and psychologically. Example, parental attitudes to education can have an influence on a child's educational performance. Knowing this, parental support plans can be implemented and family education can be encouraged and supported. Allows teachers to effectively interact with children at their developmental level. Communicate ways that are age appropriate. Encourage appropriate and relevant play. Helps children express and understand their and others' emotions, and reinforce appropriate behaviors. A developmentalist is any scholar who seeks to understand the human developmental process. Includes psychologists, sociologists, educators, biologists, physicians, etc. The perspective taken to explore development is driven by theoretical background, interests, and purpose. Development defined. Systematic continuities and changes between conception and death. What drives development? Maturation, hereditary influence on aging process, and learning, change in behavior due to experience. There are typical pathways of development, yet no two people follow the exact same path. Typical patterns refer to as normative development. Individual variations in patterns referred to as ideographic development. Goals of development. Describe development. Normative development and ideographic development. Explain development. Why do individuals develop differently? And optimize development. Apply research findings to real world. Phases of development. Developmentalists often classify developmental phases with specific age ranges. Example, infancy equals the first 2 years of life. Yet, these are not standardized phases, nor do all developmentalists agree on classifications. We will explore several theorists' perspectives in this course. In order to study child development, it is important to understand the concept of childhood has changed over time. Early developmental theories. Performationist, approximately 6th to 15th century, predominant view children was miniature adults, children not seen as unique phase of life, first 7 years of child cared for but then expected to care for themselves. Views on children in preformation. They were treated as adults. Clothing, employment could begin at age 7. They could be married starting at age 7. They could be imprisoned or hanged, charged for crimes as if they were adults. They had to learn trade skills. They had to complete apprenticeships. Children freely mingled with adults. Even existing prenatal views was a fetus being fully formed at conception. Do preformationist view still exist? Some say yes, and that adults expect mature thought and behavior patterns from children, knowing to just sit still in social events. Example, you know better to lay down in church, understanding budgets and spending. Example, you know we can't afford that, assuming their thinking is similar to ours in games, activities, or other environments. During the 16th, 17th century, rise of middle class, white-collar occupations begin to emerge, lawyers, bankers, journalists, etc., occupations that required reading, writing, and math skill. Thus, a new demand for academic instruction versus apprenticeship training only in children. Reading, writing, math became goal for learning in children until age 12. Children slowly became seen as future adults versus little adults. A new status evolved for children. 18th century decline of belief that human embryo is fully formed due to advances in scientific understanding of the embryo. With this new understanding, there is interest in the child, a fascinating area to explore. Many theories arose reflecting the views of those trying to explain children and childhood. Notable early developmental theorists. John Locke. His views on children and development believed all humans were born with a blank slate. Their ideas came from experiences, refuted idea of innate ideas. Environments molded the mind. Said early years are especially influenced by the environment. How? Associations. Thoughts and feelings develop through association. Two things occurring together become associated. Repetition. Practice of something becomes a habit that child feels uneasy about if they do not repeat it. Imitation. Child does what he or she sees others doing, and rewards or punishments. Engage in or refrain from behaviors based upon rewards or consequences received. Locke's view on education and learning. Locke believed in the importance of character development in academic learning. He wrote Some Thoughts Concerning Education in 1693. He stated the main goal of education was self-control. He felt all adults should instill in children self-discipline. Locke said, give plenty of exercise, keep them outdoors to play in all seasons, do not coddle or indulge as habits will form and they're hard to break. Locke opposed use of physical punishment with children due to undesirable associations made. He opposed sweets and money as rewards, as this encourages child to only find happiness in these types of things. He believed the best rewards was flattery and praise, and the best punishment is disapproval. Cold glance, make them feel shame. Locke believed a child learning more from example than abstract ideas / rules and expectations need to be given opportunities to practice expected behaviors versus just giving a command to do it. To be effective, instruction must be enjoyable. Locke on teaching. Children ideally should learn through game. Instruction must be arranged in steps, one mastered before moving on to the next. Rewards and consequences are very important. His learning principles, association, repetition, modeling, reward / punishment became cornerstones of what became learning theory. Another notable early theorist is Rousseau. Rousseau agreed with Locke that children were different from adults. Example is that he and Locke both opposed preformationist views, but he did not agree on the blank slate. Instead, he felt a child had their own modes of thinking and feeling based upon natural urges and stages. He felt nature must be given the chance to guide a child's growth. Rousseau did not feel adults trusted their own judgments. They were dependent on the opinions and reactions of others. Rousseau had a complex personal life, which may explain his revolt against environmental influences. His mother died giving birth to him, raised by father and aunt. Father never let him forget he caused his mother's death. He was not allowed to play with other children. He read constantly, mostly books his mother had owned, romantic stories of fantasy, love, etc. His friends were his books and those characters. Rousseau referred to as the father of developmental psychology by many, but some debate this. They question his theory. Later in life, he fathered several children and gave up each one to an orphanage. Does he have the credibility about children's development? Continue. Developmentalist Rousseau. His most notable contribution to development was Emily, a story of a fictitious boy who raised according to nature's plan for healthy development. Make note of anything interesting you see in the section of Emily you explore test question. Rousseau's theory on development. He felt childhood was unique according to nature's design. Nature is the hidden tutor who prompts child to develop different capacities at different stages of growth. Rousseau felt that there were stages of development. Infancy 0 to 2 years, childhood 2 to 12, childhood stages long. Late childhood is 12 to 15 years, and adolescent is 15 plus. He strongly felt that children need time to development, that society was always rushing children to become adults. He saw it differently. On learning and education from Emily. Rousseau felt a child learns on their own from nature's inner promptings. A tutor, adult teacher provides guidance only. A tutor never corrects or answers for the child. Goal was to help children learn to solve problems on their own. Don't teach, but allow child to discover. Only adolescence does Emily begin reading many books and enters the social world. He has an independent nature at this stage and can only judge society at its true worth. In our hurry to teach children what we think they need, we present lessons that exceed their understanding and force them to turn to us for help. Childhood has its own way of seeing, thinking, and feeling, and nothing is more foolish than to try to substitute ours for theirs. Educators and parents should give children a chance to learn in ways that come naturally to them. Nature made me happy and good, and if I am otherwise, it's society's fault. Rousseau laid the groundwork for many future areas of developmental psychology. Arnold Giselle, a pediatrician and psychologist influenced by the early ideas of Rousseau. Giselle regarded developmental and genetically determined process that unfolds automatically like a flower. His theory is known as maturational theory. Primary views of maturational theory. Child develops biologically in predetermined order from within and unfolding in fixed, predictable sequences or stages. Every child goes through the same series of fixed sequences, but each child has a unique rate or pace. Maturational theory playing a larger role than environment and genes and human nature, hereditary, body type, temperament, culture, health, and intelligence. Giselle's research carried out the first large-scale detailed study of children's behavior, authored several books on the topic in the 1920s, 30s, and 40s. His research revealed consistent patterns of development supporting his views that human development depends on biological maturation, with environment providing only minor variations at the age at which a skill might emerge but never affecting the sequence or pattern. Giselle's research produced norms such as the order and the age range in which a variety of early behaviors such as sitting, crawling, and walking emerge. In conducting his studies, Giselle developed sophisticated observational techniques, including one-way viewing screens and recording methods that did not disturb the child, developmental norms, fixed prenatal sequence, example, development of heart, then central nervous system, the arms, legs, after birth, caudal sequence, lip, tongue control, eye control, neck, shoulder, arms, and hands. While growth rates vary, growth sequences do not. Sequences happened naturally. Giselle was particularly opposed to efforts to teach children things ahead of schedule. Children will sit up, walk, talk when they are ready, when their nervous systems have sufficiently matured. Giselle, the study of patterns. Patterns equals anything can be identified as separate or with characteristics of its own. Example, vision and hand-eye coordination. Aimless movement at birth, gradual ability to stop and stare after a few days, 1 month focus on an object near the face, 4-month coordination of visual focus and hand actions with large objects, example given rattle. 6 months coordination of visual focus and hand actions with small objects, and 10 months ability to see and pick up small objects with pincer grasp. Giselle continued maturation theory. He believed children display a range of behavior in cycles. 18 months to 4.5 years, the child experiences temper tantrums. Child does become more easygoing over time with maturation, but by the end of this stage, they're still experiencing emotional outbursts. 5 to 8 years, the child becomes more confident in who they are and they can make friends. According to Giselle's theory, at age 7, child becomes fearful. By the end of this stage, they are relatively outgoing. 9 to 17 years, child displays many worries and anxieties during the odd number years, but during the even number years, 12, 14, 16, they're more positive and energetic. Giselle, equilibrium and disequilibrium. Phases of equilibrium and disequilibrium begin at birth and extend far into the teen years. Infant cycles between these periods and calm disorder weekly. As children reach the age of 18 months, the stage of development cycles less frequently, every 6 months. Typically, these 6-month segments occur until the child reaches the age of 6, when the cycle begins to place yearly. Criticisms of Giselle's maturation theory. Psychologists argue that the child is influenced more by the environment they live in. Giselle was ignoring this. Research years after Giselle's original theory suggests his milestone cycles and periods and norms were a bit off. Giselle only used white middle-class parents and their children in his research, so norm not universally applicable. Giselle's views on child rearing and learning. Since evolution has produced an organic clock which governs development, parents should not attempt to change it. His perspective for ideal development: demand feeding is best, feed child when they want to eat, driven by their natural urges. Sitting, crawling, and walking develop on their own, do not need parental prodding or rushing. Child's first year is key. Parents should not try to understand desires and needs of baby. Parents should try to understand desires and needs of baby. Spend time just watching the child and learn these. Parents needs to be aware of natural development sequence, leads to patience during times which to the child is problematic, example, terrible twos, or various periods of disequilibrium. For parents, expect the child to be immature. Maturity will come later in time based on natural plan. No periods of equilibrium are coming. Know that Giselle was criticized for promoting indulgence for children. Where are the expectations for the child and their behaviors? Ethological theories. Ethology, study of animal and human behavior with evolutionary context. Its purpose is to identify behavioral patterns that have had many and may continue to have significant impact on survival of species. Arose from the theories of evolution of man. Darwin, theory of evolution, suggested original species from theological view was not correct. 1870s, he felt humans and other species descended from common ancestors. Humans branched off ape-like species. Greater diversity in traits among members of a species increased the likelihood that adaptive traits will be available to overcome any risk to survive. Adaptive traits are thus selected into the species across generations. Darwin proposed that a special survival dependent on this process, which he called natural selection. development of each individual may be through a unique experiment in survival, a unique combination of genetic traits confronting the ongoing process of natural selection. Ethology evolved from Darwin's original ideas. Ethologists believed the only way to understand humans and animals is to study them in their natural settings. Instinctive behavior, a special class of unlearned behaviors released a specific and external stimulus. Example, distress call from baby chicks elicits rescuing behavior in mothers. And reflexes are wired in